Good evening, and welcome to CrowCast again this Sunday night, the 5th of March, 2023. Coming off another great win in the preseason for the Crows, and lots to talk about. And joining me, as always, and I'll make sure he's unmuted so we can actually hear him. Macca, how you going, mate?
Very good, thanks, Ben. Very kind of you to unmute me.
Well, you know, I do what I can. And look, a fantastic hit out again on Friday night, and lots to talk about, mate. You would have been fairly impressed.
I really was. It was a pretty good, well, overall it was pretty good, but there was one patch in the third quarter. And I'll talk about that later, what kicked that patch off. But overall, you'd have to say 3.5 quarters of very, very good football.
Yes, I agree with that, particularly the first quarter. And as you mentioned, we will go into it in lots of depth as we go through. I have to say welcome and thank you for everyone who's joined us on Discord. We have a nice little studio audience there building, currently about 20. Don't forget that we are live and interactive. So there's a few people, I think, that are looking maybe to call in, Mac, and we welcome that, don't we, mate?
We do. Actually, I know a couple are going to come up already, but I'd like to call one up. That's Vardy Magic. I reckon it's about time he had a crack. Don't you reckon, Finn?
Oh, look, it's long overdue, mate. Long overdue. So we'll see if he's got the agates. Also, welcome to everyone who's joined us on YouTube. Of course, the YouTube chat and the Discord chat merge, so everyone who's chatting on any platform that we're streaming on tonight can see everything else, which is just the wonders of modern technology, mate. Welcome to everyone who's listening on demand, or those few who are listening to us live on Spreaker. Don't forget, if you are listening to us on audio through iTunes or whatever, drop us a review, drop us a like, make your comments known. It's always good to hear what people think, and where there's some feedback, we always listen to it. Now, mate, first things first, we have to make sure that everyone's aware of our competition. So we have our fantasy league is going. I'm not sure 1990 might be able to drop something in chat when he's here about the fantasy league, but I think one league is full. I'm not sure whether anyone else has taken us up on the second league, but there's a second league there if anyone else wants to join us, so go ahead. Also, our tipping comp's available, so crack into that. The links to both of those are in our Discord channel under competitions, so make sure you crack in on that. 1990 says that there's 3 in on the second league already, so let's see if we can fill that up as well, so we can have 2 good leagues going. Of course, there will be prizes at the end of the season for that. Bit of merch. So get around it. All right, Mac. And yes, Vardy also says, make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well. We're really trying to get those subscriptions up over 1,000 if we can, so we can do a little bit more. So get around us on YouTube if you can, and like and subscribe. That would be awesome. And also share your links with your friends who barrack for the Crows and may not currently be aware of us. All right, that's enough of the gratuitous plugging, Macca.
Yep.
So, overall, what did you think?
Well, what I did like was our intensity. We start off with them. I mean, it's one thing to have ability in your side, a certain amount of ability, but if you don't use it to your maximum, well, you're not going to win a lot of games. And I thought our intensity, and we maintained it for nearly the whole game, just a little lapse at the last half of the third quarter. We were probably not at our best, but I reckon for the rest of the game, I would say I can't pick out a player who didn't play with intensity, whether they played well or whether they played medium, etc. They've got Nick has got buy-in from these players. He has definitely got buy-in. they're really trying. And the other thing that really impressed me is that some of the really good players, apart from Laird, etc., were the young boys that we really want to become our stars of the future. I think some of them, and we'll go through that, but some of them are very, very impressive.
Yeah. No, look, I agree. Going back and having a look at the replay as I was chopping it up for a little bit of live highlights that we'll show in a little minute. I'm probably tempering my previous enthusiasm a little bit, Macca, a little bit. We got off to a flyer, and I think that flyer was largely due to West Coast just not being at the intensity that they needed to be for the first quarter. The rest of the game, until probably the last 15 minutes or so, it was relatively even on the scoreboard. I felt like we had some really good patches of play. How can I say? Our tenacity at the ball, our aggression at the contest was fantastic. I think we've still got some work to do with regards to our connection from our midfield to our forward 50. And I still think we've got some work to do with our centre square setups.
Well, yes, the centre square setups, I think they ended up about breaking even, if I remember rightly. So, I mean, they had a couple of decent players in the centre square too. So, in fairness to that, but blokes like we were running a lot of juniors through there as well, though. Fane, you've got to take that into account. We didn't necessarily put our at any one time 3 senior players in there. We always were playing at least 1, if sometimes 2, of the young blokes through there, and which I thought was a great thing.
Well, you're preempting. You're assuming what I'm going to say. It wasn't about the cattle in the midfield. It was about the setups and also our ruck. Whether it was Rob or Elliot, our rucking was ordinary during the course of the game. I felt like both our boys in the ruck around the grounds were ordinary during the course of the game. I felt like Elliot was just half a beat late to just about every contest he went to on the weekend, on Friday night, Mac. So his intensity, I feel like, whether it's intensity, it's probably more concentration, I think, with Elliot. He just seemed to be half a beat behind, and we'll see some footage there that'll back that up. Look, and I'm not... The good thing that I thought our midfield displayed, and it's a very important point because you can get your setups wrong and you can get your matchups wrong in the midfield. But I think in the past, what the Crows, certainly in the recent past, what the Crows have been guilty of is once the ball is lost in the midfield, sagging off. And you'll see as we go through some video later on, Mac, what we didn't do in this game, and I didn't look closely enough in the Freo game, but I suspect it was the same. The second effort, staying at the contest, staying at the play with the ball, and forcing turnovers in that first little piece of play after a set of bounce was critical. And the amount of times we actually ended up getting a clearance or a rebound off halfback because of the pressure that we applied when Freo got when West Coast got first use was exceptional, and that more than anything else was why our midfield beat the West Coast midfield, certainly in centre bounce clearances. It was that pressure and that ability to stay at the contest that was key.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you've said there because the type of guy that was in there, I mean, Saligo, for example, I mean, he creates massive pressure. Even whether that's to get the ball or whether that's to prevent somebody getting the ball or getting somebody who's got the ball. I mean, 100%er. And Laird's always good at it, and Berry always good at it. So I think our midfield's never going to be regarded as top 10 midfield. But I think it's going
No, I
to be
disagree with that. Disagree with that,
well,
Mako.
well, perhaps I'm a bit harsh, but you could name probably at least half a dozen midfielders probably the better.
Yeah,
But,
right now, like at this very moment. But
I am talking
we've
about
got
now.
some. Well, I mean, the potential that is there in the midfield. Jake Saligo had an extremely underrated game in terms of the minutes that he played around the contest. When he was around the contest, he made things happen, and there's some stuff that he did in the midfield that was fantastic. And he is clearly a natural midfielder, and he's going to be immense for us this year. Harry had a quiet one, I felt, was a bit in and out of it. Rory Laird was excellent. Sloaney, when he went in there, was quite good. Sam Berry, again, another monster. He's just turning into an elite power midfielder. Fantastic. So I don't think we're outside the top 10 even now in terms of midfield, Mac. I think that's underrating us.
Well, I'm saying that's where I think we're probably around something between 6 and 10 at the moment. But the real positive about it is, though, the guys we're talking about, Saligo, I mean, this is really his first year getting a crack at the midfield. And Rochelle and Rankin and even Schonberg. These aren't very experienced players. And if you take what they're going to produce by the end of the year compared to what they're producing now, if they follow the normal natural up curve, they should be taking our midfield perhaps up into the top 6 midfields. But I can only call it as I see it at the moment.
Mate, that's what I've got you on the bloody blower for, mate, to have your opinion. And I certainly appreciate exactly where you're coming from. But I'm quite bullish about them. Irrespective of where we would rate them right now, I'm very bullish about them going forward. Josh Rochelle, again, through the midfield, some fabulous stepping through traffic. His composure through traffic is fantastic. We've got some real players there, and everyone bangs on about we need a big midfielder and all the rest of it. Well, Sam Berry's a big midfielder. He is a monster through the midfield, and the blokes that we've got around him and Rankin to get more minutes as well are just fleet of foot, and they're light on their feet, and they show good awareness in traffic. It's a really good combination. What I worry about is that they're not going to get a lot of first service from Riley O'Brien because he's been ordinary this pre-season, in my opinion.
Well, he was ordinary again. I mean, his effort was I thought his effort was good. I mean, you could see him trying, but look, he's the furthest thing from a ballet dancer that you could imagine. I mean, he's almost Unco, isn't he?
Oh, and not almost, nothing almost about it. It's
right,
completely Unco.
Yeah, and if you could count the number of clear taps, on one hand, and the one that really stands out for me was in the halfway through the third quarter, when it's in the West Coast forward line, and it's very close to the goals. So up goes O'Brien, clean, beautiful tap. Straight down to a West Coast bloke standing right on his own, just facing the goal. He just has to kick a goal. Well done, Rob. Beautiful stuff.
Yeah. Look, we've had a fair few seasons now of Riley's ruck work, and I don't see a lot of improvement, Mac. We bang on about the same old things. They didn't have their number. They had a young lad rucking West Coast, and I reckon he towed Rob up at centre bounce. Around the ground, it wasn't much of a thing, but certainly at centre bounce, he got destroyed, Riley O'Brien.
That kid's only played 14 games.
Yeah.
The one that was rucking against him. I mean, O'Brien should have monstered him. He should have. But he didn't.
Yeah.
Because the other bloke could actually jump. That was the first thing. And the second thing, the other bloke, if he ever did put his hand, was trying to direct it to a player. Whereas Rob, I don't know what he's trying to do.
Well, you know what he's trying to do. He's trying to put it down wherever he can. There's no method to what Riley's doing, really. Although, I mean, look, that's a bit harsh. There was a few times where he was able to get hand on the ball where he did put it in a good position. But by and large, we know what Riley does, and that's taps it to the convenient location. So, do you feel like having a look at some highlights, Mac? Have you got access to the vision there, or
I've got vision.
you've got vision? What we might do beforehand, if there's anyone that wants to have a say before we get into having a look at some of the highlights, feel free. Now would be a good time to do it. So stick your hand up if anyone wants to have a chat, and we'll do that. We'll try and do that before we start going through some of the vision. So now's the time. Mac, just the other thing while we're waiting for people to like Vardy to get their big boy pants on. Darcy Fogarty up forward, mate. How's that looking?
Well, he's really just progressed from last year, hasn't he? He came good at last year, about halfway through the season, and I think he likes the feeling. He really liked the feeling because I think he looked even more powerful and more monstrous in that first quarter in particular. I mean, he was good for the game, but that first quarter, 3 goals off memory, and yeah, look, he's going to kick a lot of goals this year. Because he's really got the belief that he's good, and he really has got the taste for wanting to do well.
What I'm seeing too from Darcy is a lot of work without ball in hand. So he's working up and down those wings. He's double leading and all that sort of stuff. He's really taken on the mantle as our number one forward, I think. And we noticed that Tex bobbed up late when Darcy went off, but really it was the Darcy show prior to that. But you have those two blokes, Tex and Darcy, coming up high and playing that elastic band type of forward setup with, our little crummers. Luke Pedler, I thought, had a really good game as well up forward. We probably didn't get enough out of Elliot Himmelberg or Riley O'Brien when they played forward. But certainly Darcy was a standout.
Himmelberg did have chances. I think he kicked 3 points, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, he kicked a couple of points, but he, again, and you'll probably see in the vision, the vision that I've done is one on our centre bounce stuff, which I'll do first, and then I've done some stuff on our centre bounce clearances and our forward 50s, and you'll see that quite frequently, Elliot, as I said, is just one step off. He's just late to a lot of contests. And whether that's poor kick into the forward line or whatever, I'm not quite sure, but he's just got to be a bit more switched on. At times he can be just off the pace, and he had one of those games on the weekend, I felt, Mac.
Yeah, the one thing I will give him credit for was the fact that he did actually get himself involved in the play, even if he didn't necessarily always get the ball, and which is because sometimes in the past you don't see him, but at least he did, and also I thought he was putting in a lot of effort. You're right that at times he just wasn't quite there, but I think he's on the right track at the moment. I'd have to say he's heading upwards rather than flat or downwards.
I'm happy to have him in. The interesting one was Riley Thilthorpe, not played in the main game. He played minutes rucking in the seconds. They had 3 quarters after that, and there were some good performances in that. Lockie Gallant kicking a couple, and Riley pretty much rucking most of the time with Kieran Strawn. I found it interesting that they decided to have him back there. It says to me that he's not in round 1 considerations.
Well, that definitely says that, doesn't it? And Nix has got a very hard edge to himself. With Nix, he'll make an opinion of where a player's at and with what he's giving and whether he thinks there's a lot not being given, etc. And he's obviously made that judgment about Thilthorpe. And I have to agree with that. I mean, Thilthorpe kicked 5 goals in his first AFL game. Now, if you had an even chart, you should see a gradual rise, but that hasn't happened with Thilthorpe. And I think one of the problems was that Thilthorpe had a couple of poor games, and then I think he lost confidence and he lost belief in himself. And I don't think he'll get played until he's starting to dominate in the twos.
Well, here's what I reckon, Mac. I reckon they want him to have 3 or 4 games rucking in the twos, and then he'll take over from Riley O'Brien. I don't think it's Thilthorpe or Himmelberg anymore. I think it's Thilthorpe or O'Brien. And I think that's what the deal is. I think they want him to run around rucking in the seconds, in order for them to be able to bring him in ahead of Riley O'Brien in the first. That's what I think.
You could well be right too. I mean, Nick's he's a hard enough coach to do it if that's what he's thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it may not turn out that way, but I'm sure that they see him as our number one ruck going forward and playing like a Grundy or a Nat Newey, that sort of type where, he rucks, but he's also more or less another on-baller when the ball's in general play.
Yeah, well, the reason that's why he's playing in the twos is because he, in the first trial, did he play in the first trial?
Yeah, he played a little bit.
Yeah, because I hardly noticed him. That's why I'm wondering whether he was in that first trial. He's obviously in match sim and that first trial. He obviously hasn't got Nix's heart beating fast, and I think you're right. He's going to have to play like 3 or 4 good ones in the ruck to make a spot.
Yeah. All right. Well, no one's got the agates to put their hand up, Mac. So what we might do, I think, we'll just get us into some footage of the centre bouncers, and we'll just have a look and see if I'm talking crap or whether I've actually got a point. So we'll just chuck that up here.
Yeah.
So, and I've just gone through them, so I'm not going to stop at every one. I'll stop at a few points, but you can see already, like Riley's been beaten at the first 2 there. But it's the harassment when the ball hits the deck that is the key, right? So that was a good tap by Rob, although Sam got wrapped up. But have a look at that hands by Saligo to get it out. Beautiful.
Brilliant. He's a good brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, and McAdam in. That's the type of... So that's one clearance to Saligo. So you can see this one. Watch this one, how much they harass. Rochelle stays on him. Keys, Harry. And we force a turnover here. Now, that was indicative of how our centre bounce work happened, and Pet's got a bit confused with text there. But that happened regularly where we would lose the initial possession, but we would harass and harass until we got the ball, and then we'd clear. This one, I think, goes out the back eventually. See, all this harassment, and then bang, hinge with a tackle. See, that was consistently what was happening all day. Clearance by Saligo off to Rochelle, and he just got a bit confused there, and it was a pity he couldn't go forward. Another Saligo clearance.
Yeah, he was good.
Very good. That was a clean West Coast clearance. That was probably one of the few that they actually got. See, Himmelberg and O'Brien are both getting beaten to the tap there. But credit to O'Brien and Himmelberg, they both stayed in the contest as well, and they were in. That was only Murray's bad kick there, but both Ruckman were staying in the contest well. It should have been a free, and then they got paid one. That was just unlucky that the handball didn't come off there. So you can see, Mac, even with West Coast mature bodies, like they had Shuey and Yeo and all that going in there, we were still able to continue continually force turnovers in that first little phase. So we weren't necessarily getting first use, but we weren't sagging off when they got the ball. And that's something that we've seen in the past, particularly when it's been Crouch and Laird and such in the midfield, that as soon as they've got possession, we've sagged off. But that was not, it was quite clear, and this footage shows it, it was quite clear that we stayed with them until that ball was gone.
Yeah, but that's intensity and work rate.
Exactly. And it's concentration too. Concentration to stay with it.
Yep. No, it's a whole package: awareness, intensity, concentration, and the boys that we put in there, they are at the moment they are very intense. But they're very, very intense.
See this one again, because of the pressure, we turn it over off the back half, and we're able to clear it wide, and away we go. And if it wasn't for Muzzer just overcooking that kick, we would have been out there. You know, look at that. That's fantastic, that is. And look, we turn it over, we get another handball out, and if that second handball had been better to Dorsey, would have been, kicking it into forward 50 again. That was... And, the other thing that I think is underrated see how Himmelberg was just late to that contest then?
Mm-hmm.
He's late to that ruck contest.
Well, he was to a couple, yeah.
But he stays with it, which is good. Even Matty Crouch got a couple of CBAs. And that's the thing. Riley O'Brien stayed in the contest there and laid that tackle to turn it over, and that's what and that's what we lacked in recent seasons past. Is we wouldn't have had the players there to produce those second or third efforts to turn the ball over previously.
I agree.
So the ball movements here is really good, and we're also wanting to go back into the corridor. Even Riley O'Brien's kicking one in there. And see Himmelberg again late to the contest.
Himmelberg will think you don't like him, mate. You're only picking out all his bad spots.
No. This is every centre clearance.
No,
I'm not picking anything out. And that was the end. So, in terms of our centre bounces, do you see what I'm saying with regards to our setups not necessarily being particularly... they didn't work particularly well, but what did work was our pressure at the ball carrier when we didn't have the ball, and our ability to force turnovers in that first phase before they were able to get a clean clearance away. Yeah,
and that was critical actually, because if we just rolled the clock back, say, to the beginning of last year, a lot of those would have been clearances in favour of West Coast.
Yeah, and the other pleasing thing about that is, as you mentioned, they had their mature midfield in for most of it, and it was the young lads, Saligo in particular, but also Rochelle and Schoenberg and that, getting their hands on the ball. We had Mitch Hinge getting involved quite frequently off the wing. It's we're not. I think Matt Crouch may have only attended maybe 3 or 4, or if that, probably 2 or 3 centre bounces. So
I think he was there for 3 or 4. I think, man, because he was involved in most of the ones that he was there.
Yeah, he wasn't there for many though, is what I'm saying. There would have been 20 odd centre bounces given the score. So we were running. Didn't see Keys there for more than a couple. Saw Sloan for a couple, but by and large it was Saligo. Rochelle played quite a few minutes there. So our young lads were instrumental, and as I mentioned to you before, the ability for them to step through traffic and be constructive and stay with the contest when West Coast had the ball in that first phase was fantastic.
Yep. I think he's only intended 2, I think. Give you an idea how well our midfield did go. Kelly, who's supposed to be the star for West Coast, I remember late in the second quarter, he got a kick. I thought, shit, he's playing. And it turned out it was only his second touch for the game. So full credit to our mids.
Yeah, he did have a dirty game. And he was basically carrying their midfield last year, Tim Kelly. So, no slouch by any stretch. Did very well. Let's have a look at the forward 50 entries because I wasn't as enamoured about the connection between midfield and forward this year as I was this week as I was last week, Mac. Let's have a look.
Well,
particularly early on, we wasted a lot of forward 50 entries. We spent a lot of time kicking into this little section of the ground, and we had McGovern continually and Barras as well. This sort of kick from the wing is Crows of old, and that's just bread and butter for McGovern.
Yeah, you just got to mention Smith did a lot of those again.
Yeah, he wasn't alone though. Dawson a few. We just seemed to get caught in this little sector of the ground for a while. And as soon as we were able to get a bit of separation, it turned out a bit better. This is all in the first quarter. Lukey Pedler kicking a snag there wasn't allowed. I thought it was a bit rough. But when we were able to do this sort of stuff, when we were able to, that extra little kick, Macca, just to spread them, and I think Matthew Pavlich said in the commentary how important it was against a team. Let's see, Berg there a bit late to the contest. Against a team like West Coast, and this is also the same for Geelong and also Port Adelaide, you have to spread them. If you just kick to the same quadrant all the time, you'll just get their interceptors cutting you up. And, when we did take this extra kick, and I think this is one of these plays where we were able to kick the ball across the ground reasonably quickly, but then we've gone back inside. So we've shifted the defence and then we've gone back, and whilst that was cut off again, that's the type of stuff that we needed to be doing. And I felt after quarter time we got a bit better with our entries because we were shifting lanes.
100% right, Sam. There was, and Pavlich did make that comment because I think there was probably maybe anything up to 4 or 5 entries in a row that were either cleared by Barras or McGovern.
Yeah. See that one again by Sloaney, switching lanes, spreading to the defence. That's going to get you more. That's going to get your forwards more separation. A bomb kick like this, that's just what's going to happen. It's just going to be nullified. I think this one here as well. See that little kick there. Now, Tex makes a mistake there because there's a nice little lead into the pocket there that he ignores.
Yeah, he did.
And then he just pops it on Riley O'Brien's head. And look, to be honest with you, Riley O'Brien should have made better of that. But Tex missed that little lead up. So a couple of times we tried to use Riley O'Brien as a target, and it didn't really come off. His marking form is not what it was a couple of years ago. But this is another example. Yeah, this is another example. See, McAdam, just the short kick. It's that extra kick to get us to 65 out, and this is Rochelle. How's this for a nice little piece of dance steps? Gets around the West Coast guy. That was Yeo, I think, or it could have been Shuey. Shuey first and then Yeo.
He's got that ability, that Pendlebury type of ability to make time. Rochelle has, just by body movement.
Yep. See, and that's the kick that we want. And that's what we're doing against Fremantle. We were dropping the eyes quite consistently, Macca, weren't we? And hitting up those 45. So But look where we're looking there. He's not looking off to the side until the end there. But this next kick, normally for the Crows, would go down to the left hard forward. But we're now kicking that straight to the top. And Das takes a good mark there. Again on the spread. And we're able to link up again with a few. And see again, we've not... that was cut off again, but again, it's that hitting up that I like. That's completely different after quarter time, where in the first quarter we just bombed in to no effect. This is far more considered now. And Isaac does not want to put this on Tex's head. So that's next chip kick, and now with that 65 out. And now I think Shuey tries to head into the middle again. So he's ignored the pocket and he's gone into the top there. And again, Himmelberg's not quite there in terms of getting to the contest. It might not have been a great kick by Shuey. See Himmelberg again late, but he forces the drop. But it's what happens after that. And again, look, that was only a metre off being a fantastic kick as well. It wasn't particularly well struck. But same sort of thing, kicking into that centre corridor. So, a bit of a mixed bag, I reckon, Mac, in terms of our forward 50 entries. Some bad stuff early, where it seemed like we were doing what we always did. But then we seem to tidy it up and start dropping the eyes, particularly in the second half, I reckon.
Yeah, I think it started in the second quarter as well. But it makes a massive difference. But because, as you quite rightly said, bombing it you keep bombing it from about 90 out, well, you're always going to be in trouble, or 80 metres out. Whereas if you just go that extra 20, 30 metres and get it closer, and then play a spread, and you can actually, at times I reckon there would have been about half a dozen times we had options where to kick the ball because we'd spread so well.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the last little bit, we've got a couple of people that want to say g'day. So why don't we just get Crotito in on the action? Crotito, you ready to go as soon as you click the button there? How you going, mate? You're on mute at the moment.
Hey guys,
Now we can hear you, mate. Let's hear what you got to tell us.
great to be here. Yeah,
Oh,
I
a bit
think I
roboty.
agree with everything you were saying before.
Oh, Crotito,
sorry,
you're a bit
guys.
roboty, mate. I don't know what's going on there.
Or is that better?
No, something's going on with
Alright.
at your end.
I'll come back. I'll try and fix it.
Sounds like you're holding a vibrator, mate.
In the meantime, we've got Arab Child. We'll get you in, mate. How you going, mate?
Let's see if this works. Does
Beautiful.
this work now?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
fine.
How you going?
Good. How are you guys going?
Good,
Well,
good.
good.
What do you got to say?
I was just gonna say a few things. One about Rob in the Rock. I was hearing some interview. I'm not sure who said it, but they said there's two types of Ruckman. One that just taps it down, and there's one that picks the spots for it. The one that taps it down, the midfield has to understand that they have to play that game where it's just tackle until you get the ball forward. A great example of that would be like Richmond 2017, 2018, and 2019 whenever they won it. Their Ruckman, actually, if you think about it, wasn't the best. He was the same structure as Rob, and he would just tap it down, and then the players around it, Dusty or that, would be the aggressive kind where they would just tackle until they get the ball forward. And I was wondering what you guys thought of that view.
That's fair comment.
Yeah, it's a really good point, mate. It's a really good point because you're right. Marich didn't. There wasn't a lot of method in his ruck work as well, but they just hassled and harassed and hassled and bustled the ball forward, and it's a really good comparison to make. Very good observation.
Yeah. Next thing I want to say is I feel like it sound really funny, but like this team, I would when it develops and once the players hit 50 games, because there seems to be a pattern when a player hits 50 games, they switch. Like Bogarty, I don't know if you noticed this, but he literally as soon as he 50 games, he started kicking 4 goals in a game, and it was just like constant. And I feel like once this team hits that 50 to 100 games, we will see a better team than the 2017 team, because this team is built on actual players that we drafted that have stature, that have method to the game, and are come from draft picks that are decent. 2017, we just had players there that had a good connection, that had a good coach. I don't know what you guys think, but for me, this team I highly rated. Rated actually more than 2017 for some reason, but it's just my weird sensation about it. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, what
Mate,
you're
I
saying
haven't.
is the potential. You think it's got massive potential and upside.
Yeah, definitely more than yeah.
I haven't seen a Crows side play with such camaraderie and team spirit for quite some time. That's really evident.
Yeah.
Really evident, and I think that's kind of what you're saying. It's been 2 or 3 years since we've really had a team that's played with intensity, that seems to be playing for each other, that's got each other's back. So I think you're right there. Look, 2017 and 2016, we had a very good side, but I don't see the passengers like we had, or the liabilities that we had in that side, like a guy like Richie Douglas, for example, that could be hot and cold. We had 3 or 4 players in that side, as good as it was, that could still be hot and cold. We don't it's very early days to be making these calls, but there doesn't seem to be that same liability. What do you reckon, Macca, about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. If you go through the team that they chose, under your description of the game, Himmelberg would have been a little bit of that. I'm not saying that he would be normally, and he was a little bit off in his game. But if you go through all the players, most of them had reasonably good games. So, and I think that what I like about the team, there's so many players that are playing well. And if we go through like Saligo, Rochelle, etc., Pedler, they've played bugger all games, and yet they can play a good standard of footy now. What are they going to be like? Arab Child, he's quite right.
Yeah,
they
Mick in the chat.
50 games.
Mick in the chat makes the point, I think, that I was trying to enunciate before. They aren't mentally fragile. Like, I remember when we were doing this cast back in 2016, 2017, with Pete as well, and the big knock on the Crows that came to fruition in the grand final was the mental fragility of the side. And as good as we were when we were in front or playing on our terms, we could go to water fairly quickly, and there was evidence of that through that period. There were games that we just really fell away, and I don't get a sense that, and even last year, even though we didn't win a huge amount of games, we weren't blown out that often, and the boys stayed with it for long periods of the game, and it was really down to experience, that they weren't able to get up. Whereas, so I think you've made a couple of really good points, Arab Child, and this second one is key. I don't think, as Mick says, I don't think there's the mental fragility in this side that was evident in our previous grand final team.
Yeah, there's also a lot of class. When I look back, I think the only person that really had like class was Eddie Betts. Like if Matt Crouch and stuff, yes, they were good, but they were just on bowlers. They were players, decent players. They were not incredibly. You can rely on them to win the game for you kind of players. They were just relied on each other. This team, they want to win it off their ball. For example, Rochelle last year in the first showdown, he was like, "Give me the ball. I want to kick the goal after the siren," and that really like impressed me. And I'm like, okay, we have something special here, where the players want to win and they can push each other to that next step, to that next goal. That's what I think is happening, and I think, Yeah, sorry.
No, go on. I was just going to say I love your work, and I'm glad you got your microphone working because that was worth waiting for, wasn't it, mate?
Look, he made a lot of sense there. And I think he's quite right that what we're looking at now will turn into a much better team.
Yeah, and I think another thing I've been holding back, and I just wanted to say this last week about Riley Thittlethorpe. He should be on the side no matter how crap he plays until he gets to 50 games. There's something about that. I've heard this so many times. When a young player needs to hit 50 games, it's his little apprenticeship. I've heard this through I think Michael Schutter said it, King said it. There's just so many players who said this. They were like, they need to hit 50 games. That's their apprenticeship in footy. And I feel like Riley Thorpe really needs to hit that mark right now. Doesn't matter how bad he's playing, he should be in the side.
What do you think, Mac?
Yeah, that's a 50-50 situation because his form wasn't good. And I understand where Abchild's coming from. But if you're going to have a philosophy that you have to earn your place in the side, well, then I think that Thilthorpe hasn't done that so far this year.
Yeah, I think Riley's a bit of a confidence player, and I suppose the danger is if we keep him in the side when he's down, it might actually have a detrimental effect. I would prefer to be playing him, but then when you think about selection, where do you actually put him? And I think, Nick's and a couple of others, even Elliot Himmelberg when we interviewed him the other day, I think this side is no longer thinking about, gaining experience and all the rest of it. This side is thinking to win, rightly or wrongly. This is the attitude that they're coming into the season with, that it's time to win. And we've heard, a few people say that. And if they're going to pick a side to win, I don't know whether Riley is yet in that side in the position that they want him to play. I don't think you can have Tex, Fogg, Himmelberg and Thilthorpe in the same side with Riley O'Brien. And I don't think that Riley would be as effective as Himmelberg at the moment. And I go back to what I was saying before. I really do think that their ultimate aim is to have him replace Riley Thilthorpe, have him to replace Riley O'Brien. And so you could make a fairly good case to say, all right, he's going to be better served off having half a dozen games, carrying the ruck work, and getting that experience in just carrying the ruck work for a team in the twos before they perhaps put him into the ones in that role.
And I think that's what they're doing.
Well, don't you think that he's a bit confused as well? Because I've heard about 3 or 4 different roles from him, from different coaches, from different articles and stuff. One said he wants to play in the wing. One says that he wants to be a full forward. One says that he wants to be a ruck. One says that he wants to be a ruck forward ruck. And it's just like, for a kid, I feel like he's just so talented, and he has so many good attributes that Nix doesn't really. I don't know if he doesn't fully knows what he wants him to be and where they want him to develop as. What do you guys think about that?
I think you'd find that internally they'd be very clear with him about where they want him to play.
Yeah,
I don't think he'd be under any misconceptions about what they want him to do, and it'll pan out. I think in the first half a dozen rounds as to how they use him. If he's not playing in the ones, how they use him in the twos. If they play him up forward in the twos, then we're wrong, and they wanted him to develop his forward craft. But if they ruck him along with Kieran Strawn and have him play, solid minutes in ruck in the twos, I think that's where we're going to see him. Mate, thank you very much for your input. Much appreciated.
It was lovely chatting with you guys, and finally managed to get this thing working. Yeah.
Good on you, mate. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
And we've got one more animal. Come on, drummers don't always make a lot of sense, Mac, but Animal's one of the few that does seem to make a little bit of sense on occasion.
He had a good week last week.
I'm on Phoenix. I don't want anyone getting any unreasonable expectations.
All right,
Mate, you're the backbone of the organisation, mate. How you going?
People expect me to say something intelligent now. Come on, man. I don't want
I think he's warning
no
us.
one put pressure on me.
He's got to give us a heap of
Look,
shit. Right?
I think that just goes on to my little. It was good to hear Arab Child get on because I know we had some dramas a couple of weeks in a row, but just going on his point about Tilthrop. It's so easy for everyone to forget how long it can take for big guys to really hit their straps, you know. And I'm not worried about being patient with Tilthrop. I'm happy for him to spend a few years in the twos, just building up his strength, really putting on a lot of muscle in the gym in the preseason, and because it's happened before. Teams have tried to rush guys in early, and the confidence goes away. They get a bit beaten up early, and then maybe they just don't hit their potential. So I think he's a bit too valuable to rush in like that, even if it might, maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe he does right out of it. But I think if we give him time and not too much pressure, just let him really build up towards becoming, hitting his potential, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yep. Agreed.
Hey, a little side note as well. Did you guys see the third or fourth quarter? McAdam, he's running into the forward line. He's taken on like two guys. He's come from about half out the ground.
Beautiful to watch.
You know what I'm talking about?
You'll be pleased to know that I've captured that animal, and you'll see that momentarily when we play our last little bit of highlights. It was very, very good.
Cool. You know what?
He's looking very fit, isn't he?
I might be getting a bit too excited here, but it reminded me a little bit of McLeod. He just had a lot of time, a lot of space, composure.
No, I accept that. That was a McLeod type gesture. Except McLeod could do it all the time.
Yeah, I know. It was. Look, McLeod was definitely a bit more consistent like that, but just watching that, I was like, man, that reminds me of McLeod.
No, it's quite freakish, and it was really good. It was lovely to watch, actually.
There was a beautiful goal to come from it too, and that was all his hard work. It was, man, because when I've seen him running up to those two guys, I thought, oh man, this is going to get ugly, and he's just danced around them. It was beautiful.
He embarrassed them.
It did. He 100% he did. He definitely embarrassed them. Hey, look, the one like I said in my comment a while ago, I seen you laughed at a fan because I'm going to have a whinge about the Vic media, and look, I've done this before on him, but I had a bit of listen to that new podcast that come out, Footy Talk podcast.
Yeah.
And they did their review on Adelaide, and it never ceases to amaze me how uneducated they are on our sides altogether. It's like they just don't even pay attention at all, and they'll come out and they'll have all these great things to say about all the big Victorian clubs. But when it comes to us, it's like, oh, I don't really see what they've got coming up. They've got Sloan and they've got Tex and they've got, they'll talk about all these old players that we've had for ages. But they've just got nothing to say about these guys we've got coming up. And it just never sees, like, I understand that it's not a Victorian podcast, even though they're supposed to be an all-encompassing AFL podcast, right? Like, don't get me wrong, if I was listening to a podcast about Carlton, I would expect them to talk about Carlton. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But this is the podcast that's supposed to be an AFL podcast, Footy Talk, right? And just to hear them, it's not even it's not like they're bad-mouthing us. It's just like they're
clueless,
like ugly
mate.
guys. Oh, the girls just don't even notice you're there. You know what I mean? Like,
but mate, that's why the CrowCast started. Way back in whenever it was, 2015. It was to plug a gap because the coverage of the Adelaide Crows was not only insignificant, but the little dribs and drabs that we did get was completely uninformed. Completely.
Yeah,
and the Vic media don't spend nothing at all. And I don't know whether it's because we don't have a big market. And so, in terms of clicks and media rankings and ratings and all the rest of it, we don't have a big market. Mm-hmm. So they ignore us. I'm not sure what it is, but even the local press are lazy. I mean, how much do we have to hear about Matty Crouch? When's Matty Crouch coming back? You're going to pick Matty Crouch, blah, blah, blah. Jesus, move on, for God's sakes, that was last year's news. So you did set
Yeah,
right.
you can hear Birds talk about Matt Crouch, and they're all like, "You look." They know he's. We've kind of moved on from him a little bit as a team, in a sense. And you're right. When you hear even some of the local news talk about him, how's this guy not getting picked? It's like, have you even watched the game?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
have you paid any attention to what's happening?
Yeah, I saw one of them when they were reviewing the attacks of each team, and they rated Adelaide's attack 15th in the competition. No, in fact, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. I
It's
believe it. 100%.
but that's but I mean,
on the
look.
Footy Talk podcast. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Adam, on the one hand, it's infuriating because you listen to these things for a reason. You want to get some information and some insight.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the coin, I don't mind that we fly under the radar. Doesn't bother me.
Well, it's just going to make it sweeter if we prove them wrong. Like that's the way I kind of look at it.
Yeah, rather than poor old Kenny fronting up for his 11th season of abuse.
Well, that's the thing is they tend to love talking about Port, and I don't know. It's this weird thing with us.
Yeah, they do like Port.
The thing that Adelaide have got their own media department and haven't signed up for Croc Media, which runs that's what it's all about. And that's why we hate by the media. So they'd rather savage us than say a good thing about us.
Yeah.
Like I remember even back in 2017 when we were just having, just running shit, really, really playing well during the season. And I've listened to this whole podcast and they're going about, Carlton, how come they can't get it together? Blah, blah, Carlton this, Carlton that. And the end of the podcast and they go, and look at the Crows, they're flying. Well, thanks for joining us on the Fox Footy podcast. Blah, blah, blah. It's just like, what the fuck? We've just destroyed whatever team we played the third-ranked team and we're on the top of the ladder and we killed them. and that's all they've got to say about it. Like, what's going on here?
Love it. Good stuff, mate.
You've done well, Adam.
That's my win for the week.
Yeah,
well done.
very good. Now, Animal, have you ever seen that Danny Carey video on YouTube?
Are you talking about the one where his snare drum head breaks and he has the tech come in and replace his snare while he's playing and he doesn't miss a beat?
Nah, it's a full video of him now. I think it might be Numa that they're playing. I can't remember, but get around it. You've got to see it if you haven't seen it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I might have to have a look. Yeah, no, the one I've seen recently is he's playing at a tour concert live, and his snare drum head breaks, and he looks back and for people that don't know, most musicians at that level and that are touring musicians will have what's called a tech that sets up their equipment, maintains their gear, and just looks after him in case something goes wrong during the show. And so he's playing and he breaks the skin on his snare drum, which is like the drum in the middle between your legs for anyone that doesn't know, and he's just looked back at his tech, and he's looking down, and you can actually hear the drum. It sounds like it's broken.
Yeah.
And the tech sees what's going on, runs and grabs his spare, and takes his snare away from him. And so Danny Carey's had to play other drums instead of snare. So he improvised a little to get through this part. But he's popped this new snare drum in, and he started cracking. And Danny Carey just looked back at him like, "Well done, mate." Gave him the smile, and it hasn't missed a beat whatsoever. It's absolute talent on all levels to do that sort of shit. The way he can move out of the way and give this guy space to pull a drum out that's in between his legs while playing some of the most complex drum lines out there in front of a crowd of who knows how many thousand. And
do you reckon they practice that?
Not be even phased by it.
Do you reckon they practice the pit stop?
Specifically, don't know, because but things like dropping drumsticks and stuff is pretty common. I'd probably drop drumsticks 2 or 3 times a night, and people don't realise that you just grab another one really quickly. Stuff like that, not necessarily. But having said that, things do go wrong all the time, and even at rehearsal. So a good way to focus on that is to be if it happens at rehearsal, pretend you're at a live show. How do you handle this?
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? Don't stop the song and go, "Hey, shit, my snare drum head broke." Figure out a way to get through it. So
I used to just walk off. Mate, thank you. Get around Numa on YouTube, mate. It's it's just a fantastic view because it's such a heavy drum song and the camera angles and all the rest of it. It's just awesome.
I might have actually seen. Is that the one with the massive percussion intro?
A reasonable percussion intro, yeah.
Yeah, it's like some more like African percussion at the start. before the
No,
songs
no,
and stuff.
it's not that.
I'm thinking of a different.
Anyway,
one.
we better
Never
straighten
mind.
up, mate. We're nerding out on music now.
I know. We've digressed a little too much there. But anyway, there's some drum knowledge for everyone.
Good on you, mate.
Right, thanks very much, guys. Cheers.
No worries. Now, I did notice Seeds Girl was there before and she had her hand up, but now she's buggered off. So, Seeds Girl, if you come back, we'll get you on. But in the meantime, there's just a couple of more highlights that we might just run through, and it's just really highlighting bits and pieces that, such as the Macadam one that happened before. So we'll just have a look at this, because it just highlights the talent that we've got that I don't think we've had for quite a while, Mac. This is just an example of our ball movement, and I felt really smart there by O'Brien not to give it off originally to Shuey, but to actually give that other inside handball that allowed Shuey to release. This is the one with the first one of Rochelle's, I think. No, it's Saligo, this one. Have a look. His instinct is to go inside straight away. Straight away inside. That's instinctive, that is. That's because most players would go to the outs or go to their left and get corralled on their left. That was fantastic.
He's got a real footy brain, brain.
And again, Rochelle, the instinct to go step inside. And then sells the candy and clears away. Fantastic. And that takes confidence as well as composure. I think this one might be Pedler. And, you know, Peds had a good game. Peds looks like he's fit and ready to go, and you can see, like, this is McGovern he brushes off. That's McGovern that he brushes off, Macca. Let's not underestimate what he just did, and then just to pop that on the left like that, that's strong.
That was one of the most impressive things in the game, that.
Yep.
To push a guy like him off, and then at the same time find a guy with your kick. Yep.
And again, Saligo with a really nice little give over to Dorse, who was able to pop it up. Didn't result in a mark because Elliott was a bit slack. This one again, this bang from Macadam, and then watch Rochelle swoop on this one. But again, watch where he goes once he gets the ball. Immediately to the inside, brushes, what's his name? Can't remember that guy's name. You know, arms up, is prepared to take on Yeo. The handball wasn't 100% perfect. And then Shuey's burst, and then Macadam's burst. Fantastic. And this is the one from Macadam.
The one.
You know, he's had to slow down to gather that ball and then just to accelerate, and he's burnt off that number 28 without any problems whatsoever. And then sells the little candy. Oh, I'm going to stop. No, I'm not going to stop. That was enough to give him some space. And then looking inside, obviously straight away, sells the candy, gets himself free. You know, it's really proactive stuff, isn't it? Really proactive stuff. And they're looking to go through the corridor, Macca, when they're doing that, which is the most pleasing thing. You know, and this is the last one. Just the ability to stay in the contest, Macca. I really liked it. This might be Isaac Rankin, I think. So again, the intensity, the little give from Shuey and then Rankin. You know, what we would have done in the past there is dump kick that down the line, Macca. You know, 9 times out of 10 that gets dump kicked down the line, and Rankin's looking and he can't see anything. Instead of dump kicking it, he's come back inside, and look at the options all of a sudden that he's got there as a result of that. He doesn't take them, but he's able to go backwards, and then we're able to spread the ball across the ground.
That was good thinking. Really good thinking.
You know, and in the first quarter, that would have gone into the forward line, Smack. And that's what I was saying. You know, we recognised that we had to spread them out, and you know, now we're able to hit up Tex. I think it was Tex. Yeah, Tex on the lead. Now that is being patient, but making sure that you're making the most of the ball in hand and not just dumping in. That's what I really liked. And really, that's why we ended up being so far in front. You know, we monstered them in the first quarter just because really they didn't show up, West Coast, in the first quarter. But after that, it was our ball movement around the ground and our intensity around the ground that was able to keep them at arm's length and keep them at bay. And, you know, we still have a lot to work on with our connection with our forward 50. But we've got blokes that are prepared to run. We've got blokes that are prepared to back each other in, and just where we're looking with ball in hand has changed, in my opinion. Yes. All right. Now, some other individuals. I thought Max Michelani had a pretty good game. You know, for a skinny kid, Mac, he stays in it.
Can't remember him making an error, mate.
No, he might end up just being one of those reliable 250 game players like Benny Hart.
Well, you know, that's who they're starting to compare him to. Not saying he's as good as Benny Hart now, but that's saying that's what he'll develop into, and I think he will. I mean, he was cool as a cucumber, you know, and playing at that level. And as I said, I can't remember him making an error.
No. What do you think of Geordie and Nick Murray down back?
I thought they both did a good job. Dawson is no doubt is a general, and then, you know, and to me he always had to be captain because he is the general, and he actually plays like a captain. I mean, that massive knock he got in the back, and you know, you and I, we'd go be looking for a hospital bed.
Yeah.
And he gets up. They give him a little bit of a rub, and he plays on. You know, he's good. He's classy. I mean, to get a player like him is incredible. And we picked him up, pick 20 or something ridiculous like that. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of Dawson. I think Nick Murray was very, very serviceable. Very serviceable. What I like about him, he is rough, and sometimes he's a little bit crude, but and maybe gives a free away. But I do like the fact that, you know, if you beat Murray for the ball, you're going to get hurt a little bit in the process.
Well, you're going to have to earn it, aren't you? With Nick. Geordie Butts, Mac, how'd you see his game?
Well, Oscar Allen only got the one goal off memory, and I thought Butts is not 100% back to his best, but I think he's closer to his best than he was at the end of last year. So hopefully he will just keep on improving week after week. I thought overall a reasonably good game. He was a little bit lucky because there wasn't that great pressure on him that he will come in some games. But yeah, no, he was okay in this game anyhow.
Oscar Allen, no slouch. I think Jordan Butts has been a little bit unfairly treated, to be honest with you. I don't think that he's done a lot wrong. He's not employed to be a distributor by foot. He's employed to keep the opposition's monster forward quiet. And you know, people saying, you know, he's a slow thinker and all the rest of it. Well, I didn't see Benny Rutten think too fast during his 250 odd games, or however many it was. And Benny Rutten's a club champion. You know, sometimes I think people need to just think about the role that we want some of these players to do, and then judge them on that role. And Jordan Butts' primary KPI is to stop the ball being marked by their tall forwards, and I think he's doing quite well. And I don't understand what all the negativity about Butts is at the moment, to be honest.
Well, I think that was a bit of a carryover from the end of last year because he didn't finish the year off very well last year. But and as I said, I thought was a lift on where he was at last year. So the true the true evaluation of where he is at was when we're playing a game that's really tight, really tense, and he's playing on a really quality forward. I think in a game like that on last weekend, I think Friday, well, I don't think Oscar Allen got very good service of the ball. So most balls were coming in on a 50-50 basis, which did help him. So I'm not knocking him. He did his job. There's no doubt about that. Where he's really at, we'll find out.
How many games has he played?
I agree with you. He hasn't played a lot, but he's like one of those that are still in the learning process.
Where did he come from?
The
Rookie list?
The rookie. Yep.
Some people have got high expectations. Bloody hell. I reckon he's doing more than fine, Jordan Butts. Quite happy to have him in my best 22 without any problems at all. Same with Nick Murray. I think they don't do a lot wrong. Yes, sometimes they get caught with ball in hand, or their disposal's not great, particularly Nick. But it's up to the flankers to get around him and the on-ballers to get around him. They're doing their job, in my opinion.
No, I didn't knock him. I'm just saying a better test of him will come when he's got to play, I'd say a gun forward, and when we're playing in a really hard game. But yeah, you can only do what you can do.
Yep, that's right. And someone made a good point on the chat too. The modern game really is about team defence. And there were times on Friday night where we were structured up very defensively. Mac, we had a couple behind the pill. Dawson's obviously set up as a bit of a quarterback, but we had, at times we had two behind the pill. And a lot of people would say that's very conservative and defensive, but I think it just shows you that in certain sections of the ground or at certain periods of the game, what you want to be doing is rebounding off that dump kick. And if your midfielders can force a dump kick from your opposition, and you've got numbers, that kick behind, then you can really springboard off that. And we did that consistently against West Coast. So it's about team defence and everyone playing their role, and I felt like we did that pretty well.
And one thing I'll say about Dawson that sets him aside from a normal defender is the fact that most defenders in that situation, when they get the ball, rush the ball, try to get it down quickly into the forward line when there may not be a suitable opportunity. Dawson, he mixes and matches. I mean, if there's that suitable opportunity there, he plays on quickly. Other times you'll go back. Sometimes you think, gee, he's holding the pill up here for a long time. He's just waiting for that lead. And when it comes, bang, he puts it on the chest.
Yeah.
I think it was classic, really classic.
Yeah. So, Scoot, probably a good time. Scoot, good timing, mate, to segue into looking ahead. We've got 2 weeks now until round one. And our first match is GWS away. They had a good win over the weekend against the Suns, who are just... Geez, if the Suns have another season like they've had for the last 4 or 5, you really have to start wondering what the use of that team is, because they should be a lot better than they are, and for them to get towed up by GWS, fair enough, GWS are a good side, but the Suns have been, threatening to be coming over the last couple of years, and for them to get towed up like that, horrible. Was that a fair indication of GWS, or do you think the Suns just sucked?
I would think mostly the Suns always suck, but GWS, I think, they played way below their capabilities last year.
Agreed.
I think they're probably about a 5 or 6 position higher, better team than what they actually resulted in at the end of the season. And I think at the end of the season they were sort of mixing and matching a little bit just for next year rather than the game they were playing. But no, they've still got some quality players, GWS.
Oh, 100%.
So, it's not going to be an easy game. They got Kelly is classy, and
Niglio, Whitfield. I mean, you could rattle off half a dozen. There's no doubt about that, Macca. And they certainly did play like a disinterested team last year, which is why the change in coach was probably quite timely. That obviously, Leon Cameron's message was falling flat, and so they needed a bit of a refresh. Look, I think they're at their best with their personnel. I think GWS are a top 6 team. We're obviously not a top 6 team yet. We've struggled with GWS over the past couple of years, but we're a little bit of a different side. Where do you see us maybe having an advantage, and where do you see we might struggle?
I think that our forward line, our forward structure is very good. It is very good, and I think that going by their defence, it looked good last year when Himmelberg was there, but they've got him up forward again this year. I think that they still do have a couple of nice players back there, but I think the game's probably going to get decided in the middle. I mean, they do have like a Canilio, they have a Kelly. What's the other lad's name? Green. They've got good mids, but if we can actually break even in the middle, then I think we will win, because I think we've got the superior forward setup.
Well, Mako, from my perspective, all it's going to take is for us to bring pressure to GWS, and they will wilt, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about their personnel. They have shown over a period of time that they are a soulless, heartless team, and they don't like working hard. And what they're going to come up against Adelaide in round 1 is a team that is relentless and that won't back down when they're a couple of goals down or whatever. And that's the sort of side that GWS doesn't like. So I'm tipping right now that the first time one of their mids gets run down when they think they're in the clear, they will drop their heads. And I'm tipping that we will win away by 3 or 4 goals and start the season really well.
I'm tipping us to win as well by roughly about the same margin. I was going to say anything up between 4 to 5, but because I do think we do have a better side, even in spite of they've got stars and lesser players, and I don't think Bruce. I'm not sure that he'll actually be playing. I don't know whether you saw that tackle of his where he's grabbed somebody.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, do you actually pick somebody up and then dump them on their head? I don't know.
Yeah. It was a real old school. It was an old school dump, wasn't it?
Well, it was, and I mean, he's not the favoured boy at the tribunal, and I mean, he keeps visiting him, so gets a lot of free coffee while he's waiting, I suppose. But he's been up there a lot of times. No, I don't know. He might get game, he might not.
Yeah.
But I think
sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I think we'll probably go in with a side very, very similar to what we fielded. Malera might come into the side. I don't know.
I don't think so.
I was going to say, I'm not sure who they drop out. But I personally wouldn't bring Malera back straight in. I think he should play in the twos and show us that he's in form and in his spot as well, if that's the philosophy of the team at the moment.
Who does Malera come in for?
Well, it would probably be a little peepee in the back pocket.
No, I don't reckon. I reckon Parnell stays in.
Well, look, I'm in favour with you on that particular topic. That's the only potential possibility if they did that, but I wouldn't. That's what I'm saying.
Put it this way, Miller was already borderline in terms of selection, in my opinion. He hadn't shown a huge amount in the game against Fremantle. So I'd be surprised if he came in. Look, someone asked what are GWS's weakness. I think apart from their downhill skiing attitude, I think they can be fragile in defence. I think they're going to struggle to match up with our forward firepower. We've got a lot of options down there, and I think the one that might bob up is McAdam against them. I think they'll struggle to cover Tex, Fogg and Himmelberg as well as McAdam aerially. But a lot will depend on our connection between midfield and forward 50, Macca. We need to be patient and do similar things to what we did after quarter time against West Coast, and that's just, spread the field, use the lanes, try and get separation rather than just dump kick.
Yeah, PJ Crow's made a very cutting remark, which I think is correct, that Miller is the new Douglas. And I think he's not far off the mark. Not far off the mark. I just one comment I want to make about Pedler. You forget the guy's only played 5 games for him.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
he's a tough bloke.
I thought that for a guy that's played 5 games, that was very impressive.
He's a good old fashioned footballer. Do you know who he reminds me of? With a touch more pace, Gary McIntosh.
Definitely a lot more pace than Gary McIntosh, yeah.
Yeah,
but style of play, that style of play.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Gary McIntosh wasn't slow. He slowed down as he got older, but McIntosh wasn't slow. He certainly wasn't a speedster. But just that tough hardness at the ball and that, that really nice left foot kick, that's who I see.
Yeah, and I find him very, very impressive. And as I say, 5 games, most guys don't do that in 5 games. But,
no.
And
no.
I want to talk about Rankin. Rankin had a shocker of the first quarter. He gave away either 3 or 4 free kicks, and I think he might have only had about the 1 touch himself. But to his credit, he started to get into the game a little bit in the second quarter, and I thought his second half was very good.
Look, he's that kind of player, Macca, right? And he did actually push up the ground and play a few midfield minutes in the second half too, and he was quite serviceable. Isaac's that kind of player. 1 week he's the ball's going to bounce his way and he's going to kick 5, and the next week the ball's not going to bounce his way and he's going to give a few away and look pretty ordinary. But I think the thing with Isaac is the more often he is away from goal, the better he's going to be. And as much as he's dangerous around the sticks, Macca, I think his real value is up around that high half forward mark, around the wings, maybe once or twice through the midfield, in CBAs or whatever. That's where his true value is going to be.
Yep, but there'll be times when he'll, as you say, he'll be also in the forward lines and the ball will go his way, and he's read it better than anybody else, and he'll kick a bag as well. So, he's got versatility in him.
Yeah. He's a mercurial player. He's not your Sam Berry, turn up every week and just, bash out 25 really strong, hard possessions. That's not Isaac Rankin.
No, the other two I just want to quickly mention is Rochelle and Soligo. You look at the actual number of stats that they had and you say that's not outstanding. But if you look back at what they did with every one of those stats, it was outstanding.
Yeah, well, I mean, we highlighted those blokes in our little package, Macca. Their ability to step through traffic, their composure, they're sneaky quick. They're able to get separation. They've built up some strength through the core. They can stand up in tackles. Lot to like there. Lot to like.
Sure is. No, very. No, I think we've had the almost near perfect preparation for the season. We've had minimum number of injuries, and so we're going in there with virtually a full team, and we're also going in there with our tails up because we've actually played pretty well. So, however the season pans out, you couldn't ask for a better pre-season, in my opinion.
Well, and the beauty of it is, Mac, I've got us finishing in the bottom half of the 8. But whether we do or not, the thing is we're going to get a season now of seeing Rochelle, Soligo, Schoenberg, Mitch Hinge off the wing.
He was good.
Lukey Pedler getting some gains. This is now the side, right? So for better or worse, this is now the side. You're not going to see a lot. I dare say you're not going to see a lot of McHenry. I don't think you're going to see a lot of Lockie Murphy. You're not going to see a great deal of Matty Crouch, I don't think, who might come out for Miller. now that I think about it. This is the new breed now, and we are done with the, just giving them games on the periphery. Then they now have the keys to the side, and we'll see what happens over the next 23 rounds.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And, Jad in the chat saying, does Nick survive at the end of the season, Fiend and Mac? Well, I can't. I've always said that this is the litmus test for Matty Nicks, that he needed to develop a game plan that could win games rather than just save scores. And, we've played 2, half-assed preseason games, so there's a lot to come. But it is noticeable that the game plan has changed, in my opinion.
But it has. There's no doubt about it. I like the change too.
It's got to hold up under pressure. The disposal has been flaky, but it has looked good so far. It needs to stand up under pressure, but that's it probably won't at times, and that's practice and experience. But I think if what we're doing is developing a side that can slingshot off half back, but also dispose of the ball down the field, and we saw both those styles of play evident against West Coast and Fremantle. So we've got 2 modes, together with some real intensity around the contest. I don't think that's a bad brand, Macca, to be honest.
No, I agree. We do have a pretty tough start for the first 5 games.
Yeah, but 4 of them are at home.
Well, that's true. That's true. But cover them against very good sides, of course.
Yeah, but we've got an easy one against Port in round 3. Chalk that one up for a W.
I hope you're right. I really do.
Mate, I think we might wrap it up here. There's no one else waiting to have a chat. Look, it's been a really good discussion again tonight. We've had amazing support on the chat in the live studio audience. It was great to have some blokes on having a chat and sharing their opinions with us. Vardy Magic has absolutely just missed the boat again, Mac. It's disappointing.
Well, I think he's got to make a promise that he'll come on next time.
Laryngitis, he's saying now. He's saying laryngitis now. Unbelievable.
That will be fixed next week. Vardy Magic, you are on next week. And we'll be calling on every member out there to actually lampoon you if you don't. You got to come on, mate. You got
absolutely. It's. I think the peer group pressure is now quite high, Mac. To be honest with you.
Oh, let's raise it higher. Let's really put it on.
So a few things just before we go. Footy tipping contest. Fantasy footy. There's plenty of spots left. Get around us on Discord because there's plenty of chat going on during the week as well. So if you're listening to us on YouTube, there's a link in the description for Discord. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us a review on iTunes. What else, Mac? T-shirt competition in Discord. Where's Crotato? Crotato, did you get your bloody T-shirt? Just say yes or no in chat. But there are all the things that we've got. No tea yet. Well, that's interesting because it sent last Wednesday. Anyway, we better check up on that. All these things in Discord, so get around it. Thanks everyone so much for your support. We've got a couple of weeks left to go. There's Formula 1 on later on tonight. Macca, Oscar Piastri making his debut. It's all happening. In the meantime, everyone stay safe and we'll see you next week. Good night, everyone.
Yeah. Good night. Good night, Fane.